Today, we're diving into a massive historical event, but we're going to look at it through the eyes of two kids. We're exploring how these personal stories can help us wrap our heads around moments that are just, well, they're almost too big to imagine. We are talking about the colossal eruption of Mount Pinatubo. Okay, let's just take a second and look at this. This isn't just a picture of an eruption. I mean, this is a snapshot of the exact moment the Earth decided to reshape thousands of lives all in an instant. This is what it looks like when a sleeping giant finally wakes up. So that really gets us to the heart of it, doesn't it? How do you even begin to tell a story like this? On one hand, it's a huge geological event, full of data, scientific facts, all that stuff. But it's also this deeply human story of loss and survival and people losing their homes. How do you hold both of those truths at the same time? So yeah, how do you tell a story this massive? Well, our source material tackles this problem in a really clever way. It blends fact with fiction. It uses one to give us the sheer scale of the event and the other to give it a heart. And the tool it uses is something called historical fiction. Basically, this genre drops us right into a real time and a real place, in this case, the Philippines in the early 90s. But it lets us experience it all through characters we can really connect with. It's an incredibly powerful way to make history feel, immediate and real. Now, to really get the story, you have to start with the factual bedrock it's built on. The Philippines sits right on the Ring of Fire, which is this massive chain of volcanoes that circles the Pacific Ocean. So the point is, this eruption wasn't some kind of freak accident. It was the result of these immense geological forces that have been shaping this part of the world for millions of years. All right, so the stage is set. Now let's meet our two main characters. We're going to be following the parallel stories of two kids who honestly could not be more different, and yet their lives are about to collide because of this one mountain they both live under. On the surface, you might think Datu and Julie have a lot in common. I mean, they're both 12 years old, and they both live in the shadow of Mount Pinatubo. But as we're about to see, they might as well be living in completely separate universes. So first, there's Datu. He's part of the Aya people, an indigenous tribe that has lived on the slopes of this mountain for generations. For them, Pinatubo isn't just a place. It's everything. It's a provider, a protector. His father used to say, the mountain will always provide. It's their entire world. And then you have Julie. She's an American girl who just moved to Clark Air Base, this huge U.S. military installation just 10 miles from the volcano. Her world is totally different. It's all military jets, shopping malls, American schools. For her, the Philippines is a temporary home, just a brief stop in her life. For both of these kids, the mountain was just a backdrop to their lives, just part of the scenery. But in the spring of 1991, that backdrop started to move. It started to breathe, and it started to send out warnings that something was about to change forever. So for 6 entire centuries, this volcano was dormant. And that word is key here. It means it was quiet, sleeping. Think about that. Generations and generations of Ashita people lived and died on its slopes without ever fearing it would erupt. It was just a peaceful giant. And then this happened. The story describes it with this really simple, chilling phrase. After 600 years of complete silence, the mountain began to stir. And the signs just escalated so quickly. It all started on April 2nd, when Datu saw the first little wisps of smoke. Then came small earthquakes. By early June, you could see a massive plume of smoke rising into the sky. And just a few days after that, the modern world responded with a full-blown evacuation of Clark Air Base. This is where science crashes into the story. Volcanologists show up, and they confirm the worst. A major eruption is coming. Now, for the Ayeda people, this isn't just a geological warning. It's a spiritual crisis. The very mountain they believed would always protect them was now about to destroy everything. They were told to leave the only home they'd ever known. And now we get to the climax. This is the moment where the huge scientific event and the very personal human drama become one, as nature unleashes a fury that very few people had ever witnessed before. I mean, this image just shows you the sheer scale of the human response. This is the evacuation. Julie and her family are in one of these cars, part of this massive exodus of 65,000 people fleeing the base and the area around it. It's like a river of people trying to escape a river of fire. You're going to want to remember this date. At 1:42 in the afternoon, all the waiting was over. Mount Pinatubo exploded.
in what would become one of the largest, most violent volcanic eruptions of the entire 20th century.
But then, in this just terrible coincidence, a bad situation became absolutely catastrophic. Just as the volcano unleashes an ash cloud that soared 19 miles high and literally blotted out the sun, a typhoon made landfall. It was this devastating 1-2 punch from nature. All that rain from the typhoon mixed with millions of tons of volcanic ash and debris, and it created something terrifying: lahars. And these weren't just mudslides, no way. These were fast-flowing rivers of thick, almost concrete-like mud that buried entire villages, wiped out bridges, and just completely reshaped the landscape for miles and miles around. So the eruption itself is over, but the story isn't, not by a long shot. For all the survivors, the world has fundamentally changed. And now this difficult process begins of trying to figure out how to live in this new, ash-covered reality. And it's right here, in this packed, noisy, chaotic evacuation center, that our two parallel stories finally intersect. No words are exchanged. It's just a brief glance between two 12-year-olds from completely different worlds, now suddenly united by the exact same catastrophe.
In a way, this disaster became the great equalizer. All the differences between their lives, the modern base versus the traditional village, all of it was just erased by the ash. In that moment, they were both just survivors, refugees forced from their homes.
So what happens next, right? The consequences of the eruption were so long-lasting, and they sent two lives and really two whole cultures in entirely new directions. And this is how Datu's story ends, at least for now. He's living in this noisy relocation area, so far from his quiet mountain home, and he's staring at the distant peak, wondering if he'll ever go back. And he just whispers this to himself. It's a line that's just filled with loss, but also with this flicker of hope for his people and their connection to a home they may never see again. And that really brings us right back to our big question. We can read all the statistics, the height of the ash cloud, the number of evacuees, but to really feel the ground shake, to understand what it means to lose your home, maybe we need a story like Datu's and Julie's. Maybe fiction is the lens that actually brings the hard facts of history into focus. What do you think?